Welcome, it's Jeff Nail with Jeff Nail Fishing and Guide Service down in Cumming, Georgia on beautiful Lake Lanier. And after 4 years of being in my previous boat, it was finally time to upgrade to a new one. And I'm sitting here on the steps to a 2026 Falcon F20 Predator, and it's a pretty sweet ride. So I've had a lot of questions as to why I ended up in this boat and not any others. I'm very fortunate in my current situation that there were really no constraints as far as what bass boat I ended up with. I've fished 250 days a year. I have a completely jacked up back, so comfort is more important to me than just about anything. I've owned several brands in the past. I fished out of pretty much all the brands with the exception of maybe one, but I have sat in all the major brands out on the market right now, and I ended up with Falcon, and there's a couple different reasons, some very functionally why I ended up in Falcon, and some more of just a personal reason why I went with this boat. And I'll start with the personal first. When I started this process about 2 years ago of looking for the boats, I was at the Bassmaster Classic in Knoxville, Tennessee. I sat in all of them. I talked to just about everybody, and the owner of Falcon was there showcasing his boats, and I ended up sitting in one and talking with him for, I think it was like 45 minutes to an hour about my situation and what his boats offer and why they're built the way they are, why he builds them the way that he does, why he got into the building business, the pros, the cons, the whole 9 yards. And he was very forthcoming with information with all of that. And I thought that was very unique, and I thought it said an awful lot about the company. So that got me going in the direction of Falcon. I started reading more about them and learning more and talking to people who have been in them, and the more I learned, the more I liked, and the way the ball bounced and the dice fell, here I am on an F20 Predator, and have been extremely impressed over the last few days. So we're going to go around the outside of the boat, and I'm going to talk to about some of the pros that it has, and some of the rigging options that I did with the way I did. Again, for me, fishability and comfort are more important than speed. So when choosing that, I was not overly concerned with that, and I did not really rig it to think about speed. I focused more on fishability and comfort. So first off, we'll talk about the steps that I'm sitting on right now, which is probably, well, it's arguably the most important thing on the trailer of a bass boat, with the exception of maybe the bunks. I don't know why it took the industry 30 plus years to come up with these, but these are awesome. This particular set sits out far enough that when you walk up it, you can easily step on the deck without tripping over the grass. It also doubles, I've learned, as a great little stool as I'm currently sitting on it. I can turn this way and play an awesome game of spades here with somebody on the other side if I really wanted to. You know, it's great. So that's what we're going to start off with there. Moving forward, coming down the boat, the lines of it are very clean. It's absolutely beautiful, and you'll notice the Predator model comes standard with the fancy G-Whiz rims, which is a new experience for me because I have never had a vehicle, period, with fancy G-Whiz rims, so I don't really know exactly how to deal with that. This boat is approximately 99 inches wide, which is about 3 inches wider than the average bass boat, and that's very obvious when you're sitting, you know, at the console and looking across right here. And it's also something where I didn't realize it was that much bigger until I had a part next to a 921 today on the water. And my buddy who was in the 921 and the other individual that was with us, we were talking back and forth, and it's like, holy cow, when you stick it right next to another bass boat on the water, it's like the 3 inches is extremely noticeable. And that offers a very large front deck where two people can easily fish out of it, and then also a very large back deck where your wife can lay out and take a nap if she wants to when she comes out with you. So overall, as far as the outside goes, it's a great looking boat. It's wide, it's comfortable, so forth and so on. So moving down here to the back of the boat, which is probably the important part about the outside, I went with Mercury for one reason only, and that is the dealer, Bait Shack Marine, where I bought this boat from in Gainesville, Georgia, has a phenomenal Mercury mechanic. He's extremely well known locally as a phenomenal Mercury mechanic. And then we also have another independent Mercury mechanic who is also extremely well known. So being able to get something fixed when it breaks, because regardless of brands, something is going to break at some point in time, having those two individuals gives me a lot of flexibility as far as being able to get repaired under warranty and get back on the water with this boat. So it's a common thing in some other large ticket items with mechanical, that it's more important to know your dealer support rather than the actual brand, because all the brands have their issues. I've got phenomenal Mercury support locally for me that I know about, that I have relations with both of these individuals. That's why I went with a Mercury. This boat's equipped with a Bob's hydraulic jack plate. It is also equipped with a mount down here in the bottom to mount my 3-in-1 HDS transducer in a way that I don't have to have holes drilled into the boat, which is a great deal. Back here on the back of the boat, whether intentionally or not, we've got these two pads on the very back. And for males who have to pee all the time, such as myself, this is great because I'm not standing on my gel coat in order to get close enough to where I'm not peeing on myself or on the gel coat. Also, I'm not scratching the gel coat. I can stand here and do what I need to do, and anybody else for that matter. And the boat is not messed up in either way. The next thing is we have some C-deck back here in the very back to protect where all the hoses and the cables go. And in a lot of boats, it'll rattle and you'll get some wear on the gel coat. That's protected with C-deck. And also back here, there is not a well that will actually catch and hold water and end up growing fur as far as that goes. Remote drain plug, remote charger for my charging system, which is on board, easily accessible back here as well. Now, as far as functionality goes, and this is a big reason why I got this boat, I got tired with my old boat of always trying to dig fiberglass out of my hand for a week after having to swap out a battery for one way or the other. This particular boat has the entire back third of this back deck will open up. It will open up in thirds, such as this on either side, or it will open up as a whole as such. So in the back, I decided to go with lead acid batteries, and I did that for two reasons. Reason one is these boats are designed to have that amount of weight in the back as far as their ride quality goes. And I didn't want to just have to add lead weight to the back to get the ride quality up. And the other reason is when being on the water 250 days a year, if I would have gone with like a 36 volt lithium trolling mode battery, and it would have, if something would have happened, I would have not have been able to get back on the water. With the system I currently have with the trolling motor, if I have a battery that happens to go bad, I can be back on the water within hours. It's an easy swap out. I could even have my wife run to AutoZone, grab a battery, and I come back and stick it in and still, basically be out very little time over the course of a day. As far as the other things go in here, I have a Minn Kota Precision 5-bank charger, and that'll charge my lead acid, my lithium, and my AGM cranking battery. I have a 140 amp hour Powerhouse lithium 12 volt battery to power all of my graphs and my live scope. And then I have a AGM, a 31 series AGM as a starting battery and to run my accessories on the boat. So very clean, very simple. Brandon down at Bait Shack did a phenomenal job for rigging as far as getting this going. It's extremely functional and very easy to get to. Okay. So I'm going to now move up to the actual console, and we'll talk about the stuff there at the console. All right, here we are at the console, which is where I spend a ton amount of time both with clients in the boat and without clients in the boat. And having a level of comfort here is pretty important. So first off, let's talk about the seats. They are extremely supportive. They're high-backed. They're bolstered on the side to keep you from sliding while you're beating on down the lake. And I am not a small human being. I'm 6'4", about 230 pounds. So adjustable seats are one of those things that brief well. But what I learned on my previous boat is that when they're adjustable, that means there's space behind them. And as you hit waves and you're taking waves and you're bracing yourself with your feet pushing forward, as you put hour after hour after hour, the mounting mechanisms for those seats can become loose, and I actually had to remount my seat a couple of times on my old boat. So that being said, That's not going to be a situation here. The back of the seat is up against basically where the fuel tank is for this boat. So if I'm bracing myself and taking waves, there is very little torque on the mounting brackets of these seats, which is something I actually do like. Yes, I don't have quite the amount of leg room, but I still have plenty of leg room to sit here and drive and control and do it everything else. And again, like I said, I'm 6'4", so this is pretty impressive. So here at the console, very simple, very clean, not a lot of crazy gizmos. About the only real electronic thing on here that's of significant importance is the Mercury smart gauge that's right here that controls everything as far as monitoring what's going on with the motor. It's very easy to dial through. This boat does not have a fuel gauge, and I know that is a complaint that some people, that there's not an analog fuel gauge. What I will say about that is I've never owned a bass boat with an analog fuel gauge that actually worked. So they were always off one way or the other. So with the Merc monitor, I can just monitor the amount of fuel that I've used. I reset it every time I get gas. I can do some quick math in my head. 50-gallon gas tank, I've burned 10 gallons. I still have 40 left. It's very simple to do that as far as that goes. Over here to the control panel, a lot of boats now are going to all digital control panels where everything is controlled by a touchscreen. This is all still rocker switches. Again, it allows for simplicity. If something were to happen with one of these switches, it's a very easy fix where I can swap it out, or even cross wire it, take the panel off and move the wires from switch A to switch B and get back on the water without being out of commission for multiple days. So that is a big plus as far as that goes. Blinker style trim for the trim, as well as the hydraulic jack plate. Nothing out of the ordinary there. On to the fancy graph part. I have a 12-inch Explorer Humminbird and a 12-inch HDS Pro. The Explorer Humminbird is really on here for one reason, and that is for mapping. I do a lot of instructional courses where I'm teaching people how to find fish offshore, how to set up, how to find brush and all of that. And it is hard to beat, almost impossible to beat, a Humminbird with a Lake Master chip on Lake Lanier for doing all that. It is the most accurate map that I have found, and I have ran pretty much all of the major mapping brands with the advanced versions of all of them, and this is the one that I still prefer. It's very easy to offset for the lake depth, meaning if it's above or below full pool, it's an easy offset with this. My color palettes automatically change, and I can very easily highlight the areas I want to fish using this. The reason I went with a 12-inch screen and not a smaller, again, I do a lot of teaching and a lot of instructing. It's much easier for my clients to see on this 12-inch than it is a smaller one. You don't have to have a 12 for that. It's just from a functionality teaching aspect, 12's just an easier teaching tool than it is with a smaller one. So onto the Lowrance. This is the unit that I use for side scan, I use it for down scan, and I use it for all my waypoint management, most importantly being waypoint management. The operating system, and this may be because I have used Lowrance for almost 20 years, is very intuitive. I can get through it, I can change, I can do what I need to do. It's not overly complicated. My base screen on this is a down scan, and then underneath that is side scan, and then in very small blocks over on the left-hand side is a small map and a small 2D sonar. The map is used for when I mark waypoints, and then that way I know if I come across a random brush pile in an area I don't fish all the time, have I marked this one before, yes or no? If I haven't, then I know I need to mark it. So that's why I have the HDS Pro here. The other reason why is this is it has an import plug in the back for an HDMI cable, and I'll cover why that's going to be important here in a second. But it comes into play with my Garmin, which is up front, so I will cover that when I get there. Last thing that I want to cover about right here is it is inevitable that water is going to get into your boxes here in the back of the boat, whether it be taking a wave over the back or it dumping rain or whatever reason. At some point in time, water is going to get back here. A lot of times these boxes have a small, about the size of a pencil or your pinky, drain hole. This one has a full-blown bathtub drain in it. So water is not going to sit in this back compartment for any length of time. It is going to drain out, get down into the bilge area, be pumped out of the boat and not be an issue and allow any equipment that I may have in here to dry out. As far as the live wells goes, it is a single live well with a divider, oxygenator, pump in, pump out, recirc, drains, all the good stuff. Nothing out of the ordinary with that, although it does have an LED light on the inside of it, which is kind of cool. I guess I can look at my fish when it's dark. So there is all of that. So I'm going to take a break now, and we're going to move up to the front of the boat, and I will talk about the front deck and the electronics up front. All right, so here in the center of the boat, we'll talk about the things that are right here and more or less the office at either front of the deck. So as I mentioned earlier, this boat has a 99-inch beam, which means it is extremely wide. It carries it a really good way up forward in the deck. So it is large, it's comfortable, and an interesting thing I mentioned about quality of experience for myself and the client and comfort being key. This entire front deck is padded. It's not just the very front, which is the typical way going about doing it. It's padded all the way to the very back of the rod lockers and the storage locker lids. So these lids are just as padded here as the very front of the deck is up there. So that is awesome. It'll save people's backs. It's more enjoyable. It's easier to enjoy the day on the water as far as that goes. Right here on the step to get up to the front deck is the cooler, also known as the bass boat trash can. And then I have a small day box right here, which will hold two 3600 series Plano boxes right there, and cup holder and tool holder, which is kind of off to the side enough that you're not going to be tripping over it when you're trying to get up on the front deck or moving around in the front deck. So it's kind of an out of the way deal, especially compared to the previous boat I had. So moving forward, one of the things I was most excited about this particular boat is a day box, right? So if I have clients, that means there's always somebody on the front of the deck. I did not have a day box in my prior boat, and when I had to go get something for the day, I was always asking on the move. That is not an issue any longer. So I have a day box right here. I can throw stuff in that I'm going to be using primarily over the course of the day, and multiples of, and easy to get to. There is storage underneath this tray to put things that I'm not going to need access to very frequently, such as a fire extinguisher or a tow rope or something of that nature down there as well. So that's exciting. Very excited about that. Moving on to the main storage compartment here, I believe I have somewhere in the neighborhood of 15-ish 3700 series boxes going straight down the center. On the sides, I have some 3600 series boxes. And then what's actually interesting as well is this little sliding tray that will slide back and forth across the top of this, and it is great for storing these little tiny smaller boxes or bags of soft plastics that you may be using very frequently over the course of the day. I've got some tools, a deal of line, and then also in the very front of this there's another tool holder to hold more tools, and two small compartments that I've got basically filled with line right now. So that works really well as far as that goes. There is a piece of foam up here to hang baits from and let them dry without having to put them back in the boxes, which is a big plus as well. Moving on to the actual rod locker. So on this particular boat, which is very unique to Falcon, the rod locker opens north and south rather than east and west. And while this seems like it might be an issue at first, and I know it is a concern, the rods do not go anywhere when you lift up on this. The carpet itself keeps them from sliding, so they're not sliding off the side. And I was concerned about this too until I've used it a few times, and now my level of concern has greatly diminished over the last few days. Inside of here, a finished rod locker with seafoam on the bottom. Dividers, it's got dividers to hold, I believe, 15 rods. You could probably squeeze a few more in there using the dividers, or you can take the dividers out and order the boat without the rod tubes and probably pile 30 in here if you needed to. So, but overall, it works great. It's easy access, and more importantly, when I'm at the house and I'm swapping rods out for the different seasons or what's going on or whatever it may be, I can easily get all the rods in and out of my rod locker and not have to do some kind of crazy gymnastics to get things out when I go to re-rig when I get home and I'm trying to re-rig after a day. So that is a a big plus that I was looking forward to using, and it seems to be playing out very well as that too. So next we're going to move very forward and talk about the bow. All right, we're back and at the bow of the boat, which is, I know, of interest to a lot of individuals. So we'll start with the trolling motor. I went with a Quest for two main reasons. A, and I know this is going to sound strange to some people, the head turns. And from with what I do, the head, a lot of people when they fish with me, they look at where the trolling motor is pointing and then they cast that way. And prior to having this, I had a Lowrance Ghost, which I cannot really say anything negative about, but I had clients that would always, you know, they would think that the trolling motor was pointing one way when in fact it was pointing another. It's just, and it's not a conscious thing, it's just something they weren't used to. They're used to the head of the trolling motor pointing in the direction that the trolling motor is in. So that's one reason why I went back to a Minn Kota. And the other reason why I went back to a Minn Kota is I think that their remote, from my experience, their remote is a little bit more user-friendly as far as controlling this via remote and getting it paired and just the functionality with it as well. So I will cover why that was important to me here in a second as well. Moving up here to the very front, I have an 8612 Garmin. The reason I went with an 8612 over let's call it like a 126 SV is this unit has HDMI out ports. So I can mirror this unit's display on another unit with an HDMI port. If you remember correctly, my Lowrance at the helm has an HDMI port. So this Garmin and my Lowrance at the helm are connected via an HDMI cable. And what that means is the people in the back of the boat can watch what I'm looking at in the front of the boat without standing directly on my shoulder. So if that's a client who needs to sit down the most of the time, or we've got two clients in the boat, one's up front, one's in the back. The guy in the back is not going to be completely blind. He is going to be able to see everything that we're doing. And he's also going to be able to look at the trolling motor and see where the general trolling motor is pointing without having to be able to see on top of it, or even the little display that's in the screen of the Garmin. So that is the reason with that. I went with Garmin here because I've learned forward-facing sonar on Garmin, and it's just easier for me to read. I know in theory I could have gone with Lowrance, but just the Garmin is kind of the standard in my opinion as far as forward-facing. That's why I went with an 8612. It's got a phenomenal picture. I can mirror the screen. I can record the screen to my phone and put in videos or share to buddies or anything else. So that is why this particular unit is here over something else. My HDS 12 Pro that's up here, this is here for really one reason, and that is to have a map with all of my waypoints. We talked about using the Humminbird in the back primarily for mapping. Yes, this is mapping, but more importantly, it's used for waypoints. Rarely do I go fish contour lines and everything else that I have not already dropped waypoints on. I use the Humminbird to help get me in those areas, and then I just use this to get me close to the waypoints. Additionally, I do have the 2D sonar on here also, which is wired into the universal sonar in the trolling motor head. And 2D, I have found if I am vertical drop shot fishing or fishing a spoon, like a jigging spoon in the wintertime, and even Demiki rig fishing in the wintertime, vertical Demiki rig right directly under the boat, the 2D sonar is still easier to see in some cases than down scanner, even the forward facing. So that's the reason why that's there. I think a 2D in Lowrance is extremely easy to use. And this Lowrance is networked to that Lowrance, so they share waypoints and anything else of that nature. Lastly, as far as interesting things up here, it's a matter of if, not when, that I want to have to access the stuff inside of this bow. On this particular unit, this entire piece will pivot forward, and then I can access behind here. So there's 3 screws on this side, 3 screws on that side, and then there's a pivot point right here, which allows this to tilt up, and I can get it here and change a fuse or run a new cable or whatever I need to do without fully removing all of my graphs and everything else. And that was a suggestion from Brandon at my dealer. He said he's had great success with them at work, and I'm like, well, that's awesome, because I hated taking all my stuff off. You know, if I needed to swap out a graph for whatever reason, or you wanted to change transducers, or whatever the reason may happen to be, being able to get to all the wiring in here without having to take this entire thing off is a big plus for me. That pretty much wraps up, I think, you know, the front of the boat. Oh, one more thing, and this is solely a, well, this just is a cool factor, if nothing else. That's all it is. So, moving back here to the front of the console, we have our lovely Falcon emblem right here. And the great thing about that is it will actually turn on. And I can't remember which one it is. Well, there we go. It will actually turn on and glow, which is really cool. I don't know, I just think it's pretty cool. So we got to end with a cool factor, right? Sometimes it's the functionality, and sometimes, well, it's just the cool factor. And the lit bird on the console, I think, is a pretty high cool factor. So if you have any questions about any of this, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll get them answered. And I'm looking forward to, you know, another year or so, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in this particular boat before I have to move on to another one. So thanks again, and I'll see you soon.